What's up guys, my name is Nuri and welcome to HITC Football. Today we're going to look at the worst on loan 11 in the Premier League this season. There were some players that performed alright this season on loan, like Coutinho, but these players have not hit the ground running. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Starting off in goal, and we have PIERLUIGI Gollini. Hugo Lloris is obviously the first goalkeeper at Spurs and he's probably one of the best goalkeepers to play for the club ever, and he's also one of the best Premier League goalkeepers right now. But at the age of 33, it's probably time for Spurs to start considering a long-term replacement for the Frenchman, and Pierre Gollini definitely wasn't that man. At Atalanta he was one of the most important players, and the Spurs actually thought that they could sign him on a permanent after his loan deal because they definitely had faith that he would be able to replace Hugo Lloris in the long term. Gollini will return to Atalanta, and if you ask me, there's no prospect of him coming back to Spurs anytime soon. Spurs already found their second goalkeeper for next season as they've just signed Fraser Foster, but he already is 34 years of age and this is also not a long-term replacement for Hugo Lloris. Moving on to right back, and we have AXEL TUANZEBE, and it is safe to say that it hasn't been a great season for anybody at United, but also it hasn't been great for the players that United sent out on loan, because in this 11 we have three, and AXEL TUANZEBE is the first of those three to feature in this 11. At the beginning of the season, TUANZEBE went back to Aston Villa on loan, and it definitely seemed like a good move, because in his first stint with the club, he was pretty good and flourished at Villa Park, and the club probably thought that he could do the same this time around. But it's safe to say that this definitely didn't happen, and everything didn't exactly go as expected, because already in January, TUANZEBE was sent back to United. This could have been a good fit, but it's safe to say that Steven Gerrard had different plans with the player, so in the end, this was not a successful loan spell whatsoever for TUANZEBE. Starting off with the first of two centre backs, and it's West Ham player Alex Krul. I'm saying West Ham player, but actually yes, on paper he was a West Ham player, but only one appearance this season is not necessarily what you can call making a big impact at the club. The Hammers have a good scouting network in the Czech Republic, and they thought that Alex Krul, being one of the most promising talents of the country, could again flourish at West Ham after previous success stories like Tomáš Souček and Vladimír Koufal. But sadly the youngster has failed to make the grade at West Ham this season, and reports now indicate that David Moyes' side will not be signing Krul on a permanent deal this summer, despite the sky-high potential of the player. But the current transfer value of the 24-year-old is 7 million, which is a little bit too high for a player that only made one appearance this season. So I think that West Ham is making the right choice not to sign Krul on a permanent basis, and this has not been a great season for him. Completing the centre-back partnership, and we have Ozan Kabak from Norwich City. After doing alright at Liverpool last season on loan, Ozan Kabak was viewed by many as the defensive savior for Norwich City, and they would definitely need him if they wanted to beat the odds of dropping down to the Championship in their first season back in the Premier League. And many thought that Ozan Kabak would be able to make the difference, but for Norwich this hasn't been a great season, and the same goes for Ozan Kabak. Norwich spent almost the entire season at the bottom of the Premier League, and Ozan Kabak didn't look like a solid defender throughout the campaign. The entire season Kabak struggled to adapt to life at Carrow Road, and the Canaries are not going to sign him on a permanent deal because the club had an obligation to buy him at the end of the season if they would stay up, but obviously that didn't happen, so they will not splash the cash on Ozan Kabak. So this season it hasn't been great for him. To complete the back line, we're looking at left back, and we have Brandon Williams, who was on loan as well at Norwich from Manchester United. It's the second Manchester United player to feature in this 11, and there's still one more to come. Just like the aforementioned Kabak, Brandon Williams was signed by Norwich on loan to help improve their defensive efforts for this season. And okay, the Manchester United player has fared a little bit better than Kabak. He still hasn't performed the way that United and Norwich would have expected him to do this season. And with his United future already up in the air, a poor loan spell is the last thing that Williams needed this season. And with Erik ten Hag joining the club, promising a lot of changes, and this season Brandon Williams hasn't impressed enough to make the Manchester United 11, so he could probably be offloaded in the next couple of months. And in my opinion, a relegation and a season like this doesn't necessarily bode well for your CV, so I don't think that he is worth it to play at a club like Manchester United. Our first midfielder is Saúl Ñíguez. The Spanish midfielder, who is still owned by Atletico Madrid, joined Chelsea on deadline day, and it was definitely the highest profile loan signing this summer in the Premier League. And there were high expectations for the player and also for Chelsea, and many thought that he would be the signing to help Chelsea to finally have a title challenge again this season. But a hefty loan sum and only 10 appearances later, it was perhaps not too surprising that Saúl Ñíguez ended up in the worst 11 for this season after failing to make an impact at Chelsea. And after a season like this, it's easy to forget that the Spanish midfielder was once one of the best in his position in the world and a talent who Atletico Madrid would have never dreamed of selling, which was made very clear after he signed a 9-year deal a few years back. But it shows that in football everything can happen, and even when a player is as talented as Saul Niguez and he signs a contract for 9 years, a lot of strange things can still happen. And for Saul Niguez personally, this was not a great season, and I hope that next season at Atletico Madrid he will get a chance and he will show that he's still the talented player that he was before he came to Chelsea. And history could have warned Chelsea that this was gonna happen, because in recent years loan moves have not helped Chelsea whatsoever. Think about Falcao, Gonzalo Higuain and Alexandre Pato. So Saul Niguez maybe could have seen this coming. Our next midfielder is Billy Gilmour, who joined, again, Norwich City from Chelsea this season. And we go from a player that Chelsea signed on loan to a player that departed Chelsea on loan. And for Billy Gilmour, this has not been a great season. And like I said before on this channel, it's difficult to flourish in a struggling team, especially as a young talented player. And at the start of the season, a lot of people expected more from Billy Gilmour, as he looked ready to explode onto the scene this season at Norwich, just like Williams and Kabak. But the youngster showed that he was not ready to carry the team. Billy Gilmour is seen as the future of the Scotland midfield and one of Chelsea's most exciting prospects. But this season, Gilmour's development has taken a major hit after failing to hit any sort of form at Norwich. If the right club comes in for him with a system that he can actually flourish in, I think that Gilmour will have a very bright future. But this season, it was not good enough. Our third and second to last midfielder, it's going to be OZAN TUFAN. And just like TUANZEBE, OZAN TUFAN came and went from Watford in the blink of an eye, with the Turkish international playing just 9 games for the Hornets before returning to his home country to reclaim his spot with Fenerbahce. Viewed as a replacement for Will Hughes and Nathaniel Chalobah, TUFAN struggled to get to grips with Premier League football, with the midfielder completing the 90 minutes just once in the doomed tenure at Watford. And with the club now relegated, OZAN TUFAN can look ahead and not look back at this season, because this season is a season to forget for both Watford and OZAN TUFAN. Completing the midfield with our final player, and it's going to be Donny van de Beek. And it's not a surprise, many of you guys probably expected Donny to feature in this 11. And as an Ajax fan, it's difficult to see what happened to Donny van de Beek after he left Ajax, because these last 2 years his development has basically stopped. He didn't play much at Manchester United, and when he made the switch for Everton, I expected him to kick on and finally do something good, but it hasn't been a great season for Everton, and it hasn't been a great season for Donny van de Beek. At the beginning of the season, everybody was crying out for Donny van de Beek to leave Manchester United on loan in the summer. And it didn't happen, because apparently Manchester United hindered him from making a transfer. But 6 months later, the talented Dutch midfielder was finally allowed to leave Old Trafford. Despite joining the club where failed United signings go to live out the rest of the years, Van de Beek has struggled under Frank Lampard, but with Erik ten Hag joining the Red Devils next season, the former Ajax star could maybe get another chance and he could possibly turn around his Premier League career. But in these last 2 years, did Donny van de Beek prove that he's good enough to start for Manchester United? I don't know. In his Ajax days, he definitely made an impression, especially in the Champions League. So there definitely is some talent there, and we've seen it before, but 2 years of barely playing is not good for any player. So Donny van de Beek has to work hard in the summer if he really wants to impress Erik ten Hag. Moving on to the final third, we're not playing with 2 out-and-out strikers, but we're playing with 2 wingers, because this season only 2 center forwards joined the Premier League, and both of them have been performing quite alright this season, so we're not going to pick them. So it's going to be 2 wingers, and we're starting off with Francisco TRINCAO. And if you ask me, his career at Wolves is over, but I personally think that his career at Barcelona is also over, because this guy cost the club more than 20 million, and at Barcelona he also never really made an impact, so it's gonna be tough for him to get into the starting 11 at Barcelona, or even sitting on the bench, so I don't think that's gonna happen. So this season, expect TRINCAO to be moved on from the Camp Nou, and it will definitely be at a loss. And this season his transfer value only went down, so for TRINCAO this has been a lost season. Moving on to the final player of this 11, and it's another Everton player. Just like Donny van de Beek, it's also a Dutchman. Anwar Agassi has often been an underrated player for Aston Villa, but since joining Everton in January, the attacker has barely been given a chance to showcase his talents, which could have helped the Toffees in their relegation battle. The Dutchman only played 11 minutes of Premier League football since moving to Goodison Park, and Agassi could do with leaving England as a whole this summer if he wants to get his career back on track. Agassi is a talented player, and he has a few weapons. He has good technique, he has a good shot, and he's quite quick as well, but in an entire campaign he doesn't score a lot of goals, and this was the same at Ajax, this was also the same in Lille, and the same happened at Aston Villa. So it isn't a player that you can rely on to score 10 plus goals every single season. season. And after this season from Al Ghazi and the moves that Aston Villa is making, they are probably going to offload him. So this summer, Anwar Al Ghazi's Premier League adventure might actually come to an end. So guys, that's it. The worst on loan 11 in the Premier League this season. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree with my choice, if you think other people would have made it. Be sure to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.